Hey Bobby, it's Julia, the ex-English major, and today we are at the end of March, and so it is time for a reading wrap-up where I go through all of the books that I read in March, give them all an arbitrary rating, so that way you can kind of use me to see if this is a book that you'd be interested in, or maybe it's one to skip, since I know that there's only so many books that can be read, and everyone's TBR is way too long. Go ahead and throw me on in the background while you're cleaning, while you're cooking, while you're doing whatever you're doing. As a brief little reminder, I usually read quite a few fan fiction. I don't go through any of those in this list. This is only traditionally published or published works for my ratings. I don't do star ratings because everything that I read is such a wide variety, and different books, in my view, have different purposes. Sometimes a book is a masterwork, and sometimes it's a little fairy smut book, and I like both, so I'm going to judge each one individually. For the first book that I attempted to read in March, and I'm going to say attempted because I tried picking this one up multiple times in this month, and I still couldn't get through it all the way, is Empire of Silence by Christopher Ruocchio. This is a book that my father lent me. He was asking me for some book recommendations a few months ago, and I had been hearing about the Sun Eater series over and over again, and it sounded like something that would be right up his alley, so I let him know, hey, I haven't read this book series, but I've heard really, really good things. You should read it. And so he picked it up, he read this first one, and he was nice enough to let me borrow it so that way I could see if it was something that I was interested in. And I am only this far in. I don't use bookmarks unless it's someone else's book. So usually I am one of those horrible types of people who dog ears. My books are well loved. I break spines. But if it doesn't belong to me, then I am a good person and I use bookmarks and I don't crack the spine, things like that. So it's a very good visual indicator of how far into this I got. I am a little disappointed. I want to like it because I've heard such good things, but at least this first book, again, I'm only a third of the way through, maybe a little further. It is not what it was pitched to me as. I had heard online, I can't remember who the creator was, but it was a Instagram reel, because I'm not on TikTok. It's an Instagram reel saying that the Sun Eater series is kind of for sci-fi what C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia is for fantasy, where it is a book written by a Christian author that has a very Christian meaning behind it. In this case, the meaning that I'd been told from this creator, again, if I can find them, I'll credit them, but I couldn't find it anywhere before this in preparation for this video. What they were saying was that this entire book series is talking about the power of miracles. You don't necessarily need to be religious to enjoy the text, and it's not like bashing you over the head with religion, but that it has a lot of undertones that kind of you can read between the lines. And so I was like, that sounds right up my alley. On top of it being kind of this epic science fiction, I've heard this first book compared to Dune a lot as well. And I can't get into it. I've tried a couple times this month, and it kind of reminds me of the meme that I've seen online where it's like, oh, talking with a man and he is realizing something that I learned as a woman when I was 12.
About it, it's kind of weird that all of our presidents have been boys. I wonder if there's a reason for that. It would be really weird if all of our presidents were only girls. Dreams changed my life. The first time I took them, I realized that like everyone actually has feelings, not just me. I guess it's just that I thought of everybody else more like an NPC than a person.
A little bit of an exaggeration here for this, but a lot of the messages, at least right now, it's very much like, oh, as a child, I wanted to be stoic, but I was melodramatic. And, oh, the best way to be a leader is not to hurt and hit your subjects, but there are 7 other ways that you could do. You can lead by encouragement. You can lead by example. And I'm like, great. Those are some awesome philosophical type pieces, but it's not anything new. It's not anything I haven't heard before. And I just haven't connected to the characters. So for my rating of this one, again, so far, I am going to rate this 3 separate attempts this month, and it just hasn't done it for me. I want to keep going with it because it is something that I am borrowing from my dad, and so it's not like there is a deadline anytime soon to return this to him. But this one I have kind of shelved for now. Maybe it'll be something that you enjoy, but for me, I just haven't been able to get into it. The next 2 books that I read this month, I have a video on. I went and asked my husband to pick a book that he enjoyed and that he recommended to me, since he has quite a few books by both Isaac Asimov and Philip K. Dick that I had not read. And so he gave me Flow My Tears, The Policeman Said by Philip K. Dick, and I absolutely loved it and went ahead and picked up another one that we owned called Time Out of Joint. So I will attach the video here in our description, so that way if you want my very in-depth thoughts, you can go ahead and see that. But for my arbitrary ratings, I am going to give Flow My Tears, The Policeman Said 7 characters who are extremely unlikable, but you are hooked from the first page. You kind of think that maybe there'll be someone who's redeemable and likable, and then something will happen later in the book and you're like, oh, nope, you're just as bad as the rest of them. But even though I didn't like any of the characters, I wasn't rooting for anybody, the strength of the story and kind of how inventive it was, I still really, really liked it. So Flow My Tears, The Policeman Said, if you are interested in science fiction and you haven't picked this up, it is something people talk about for a reason, and I would highly recommend that you pick this one up. For Time Out of Joint, I am going to rate this one 9 hints in your latest newspaper. So I liked this one even more than Flow My Tears. Maybe I wouldn't start with this one. Again, I've only read 2, so I am by no means a Philip K. Dick reading expert of, hey, which one should you read in which order? I've read 2 of his entire discology. What is that called? An anthology? I don't know the words. If you can't tell, it's after work here. I'm filming this after work before going to D&D with some friends. So I guess anthology is the word I'm going to use, but I think there's a better one. When it comes to his entire collection, I'm not the person who is an expert on which one to start with, but I really liked Time Out of Joint. So if you are interested in kind of what is reality, is everyone an actor, kind of things being on the surface, not being what they seem, then Time Out of Joint is definitely one that I would recommend. The next book that I picked up for March is Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett. This is another one that I have a review on. This was a kind of hidden gem. I picked this one up as a little bit of a palate cleanser after I had tried and failed for the first time with Empire of Silence, and then I was kind of on a Philip K. Dick spiral there with those 2, and so I picked this one up as kind of a complete 180 cozy fantasy palate cleanser, and I absolutely loved it. Way more than I thought I would. So much so that I had to run to my camera here and talk about what I liked so much about it. So I am going to rate this one 10 adorable cats for my arbitrary rating. This book is absolutely wonderful. I thought it was fantastic. I thought that the pacing was really good. I usually don't like cozy fantasy because I like when there's a lot more stakes. I like when it feels like the reason that things are happening is broader than just one single character, but that it has repercussions on the whole. Maybe because that's kind of how I like to try to live my life, is I like to look at things and try to see necessarily like beyond each action to myself, how do my actions affect others? I'm not saying I'm perfect at that at any stretch of the imagination, but I try to look at that, and so I like it when my stories kind of reflect that too, where things are beyond just the character's world, but that the things that the characters do and the struggles that the characters face and what the characters are fighting has broader repercussions on the entire world that the characters are living in. So usually cozy fantasy is not something that I like, but I was absolutely charmed by this book. I thought it was fantastic. pacing was great. The characters were really believable. I like how it didn't feel like people were caricatures, but that they all had their own little nuances. I liked how they were just kind of quirky enough to have their own little bits and pieces, where our female lead is kind of, she's a little type A, but she's not ridiculously so about it. And her love interest is kind of this, like, he comes off as grumpy, but honestly, he just has, like, it feels he's like a little bit autistic coded, like on the spectrum. He has his own little quirks and features there that are just little character charms. I am a big fan of this book. I would recommend, if you like cozy fantasy, this is absolutely up your alley, or if you just want a quick little read about a woman living with her cat shelter in Montreal, Canada, and the warlocks and magicians who are in her life, then this is absolutely a great one. Heather Fawcett's Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter. All right, the next book that I picked up was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I am absolutely butchering that last name. I have a couple of Brazilian friends. I don't know if you're watching this, but you're probably laughing your socks off at that pronunciation there, but I stick by it. So the next one that I picked up was The Alchemist. And this book, I'm going to rate it 3 times I had to stop myself from going to grad school. This book is, I see why it's something that people talk about. I thought it was pretty interesting. I thought it was really good. It's very short. It's very much kind of your philosophical allegory. There were definitely points that I felt really resonated with me. The discussion around like your life's purpose, and you need to make sure that you're finding your own treasure. And when we are younger, we can see the signs. But the more that we ignore the signs of what our life's purpose should be, then the less the signs will be presented to us, and we'll be more and more dissatisfied. So there were a lot of really, really poignant pieces to this. So I see why it's something that people talk about, and I really, really enjoyed it. And so I want that to be very clear when I'm talking about this. However, this book specifically, I don't know what is in the air in this March, but I read this book, and then afterwards, this book came up in random conversation. It came up in TV shows I was watching. It came up in other books that were on this list that I'll talk about later. I could not escape The Alchemist. So much so that it was kind of laughable. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, wait, they're talking about the various omens in here. And I'm like, is this an omen? I'm not about to go and obliterate my life. Kind of like I think some of the people who've read this book have talked about needing to do. I am going to separate a book from my real life, and I can enjoy a book and enjoy the message behind the book and see some truth in the message behind the book without needing to devote my whole life to it. But after I read this one, literally the next day, I was in a text conversation with my friend. One of my friend's exes absolutely loved this book, was obsessed with it. It was really interesting because we were talking about things at random, and then that conversation came up. I think she was cleaning and she was like, oh, I found this thing, it's from this book. And I was like, oh my gosh, I literally finished that book last night. And so we were talking about it. I was like, what are the odds? And then I was watching Love is Blind, and in the newest season in Love is Blind, in one of the pods, one of the men was talking, he's like, oh, you have to read The Alchemist and blah, 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 blah. It's about your life's purpose. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's so weird that it's 3 days later and this is coming up. And then I'll get to it in the book that I'm reading, or one of the books that I read later. But a few days after I was watching that Love is Blind episode, I picked up another book, and it was a plot point in there where one of the characters gives a different character The Alchemist and recommends her to read it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this book is haunting March. So March is the month of The Alchemist, though I am not going to go ahead and go full Sylvia Plath and be sad about all of the various figs that I have let kind of die on the vine, and oh, do I need to stop what I'm doing now and quit my nice little IT job and go into whatever my life's purpose should be, whatever I feel like that is at the time. No, I don't need to do that, but I thought it was a very interesting omen, so to speak, a very interesting piece that The Alchemist was haunting my March, and we will see if that continues into April. It is worth it. It is a good book, but I just think it's kind of funny how much it's come up. It's kind of, this book is hitting me over the head this month. The next book here I have is A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saft. And I am going to rate this book for a typical romantasy that's actually pretty good and gets the job done. This book, like there, it is a typical romantasy. It has a lot of the same tropes that you will see in quite a few romantasy pieces, where we have these two kind of almost enemies begrudgingly forced into forced proximity, needing to rely on each other. But as they work together, they end up finding common ground, finding attraction, and then later blossoming into a big romance before completing their task. It has all of your stereotypical story beats there, but I didn't think it was too redundant. I really liked it. It's kind of funny here that we have a female lead who she's very buttoned up and straight-laced and very clean and proper, and she kind of has her own little quirks, her own little traumas that she holds. She has, it's very like PTSD-esque, and so she kind of combats it by everything being neat and orderly and everything being to its place and not wanting to rock the boat. And then her one little vice is she reads smutty little romance novels. And I'm like, girl, check, check, check. Like, I also am somebody who likes to control a lot of my life. I don't have PTSD, I don't think. But you know, I have got little tendencies to like to have a schedule, like to have a plan, like to have a routine. And also I like to escape with my smutty little romance novels. So I was like, cool, I can really relate to this main character. And then it's the guy who he is very much a provider in his family. He likes to keep a smooth veneer of, if I keep the jokes flowing, then nothing can go wrong, and it's all up to me to be very lighthearted, to be very nonchalant, and to kind of smooth everything over. When there is chaos in my family or with my life, then I'm going to grin and bear it and crack a joke and let nobody know how much that affects me. And so the two of them kind of coming together, where one person who it seems like she takes everything way too seriously, and then a man who he can't take anything seriously. They're both kind of fighting the same demons, but in their separate ways. I thought the two characters complemented each other really well, and I thought that their romance was very realistic. It also talks a lot about both of these characters are marginalized for their own way, in their own way. They're both kind of the minority race, minority religion in their respective circles. And so I thought that was handled really well as well, where they both kind of, even though they have separate struggles when it comes to being a minority there, whether it's race, whether it's religion, whether it's immigrant status, they both kind of come together and are bonded by that and are realizing how each other is treated because of their respective backgrounds and upbringings. And I thought that was really well handled. I thought it was really well navigated, of kind of having two people come together who are various different cultural backgrounds and finding common ground as on top of their broader quest there. So I thought it was a really good time. If you want kind of magic, actually, fun fact, there is alchemy in this. The magic system is alchemy. So this is a very good one. If you are kind of dipping your toe in romantasy, I think this is a pretty good starting point. There is quite a lot of other plot happening. So the romance, though it is a major plot point, it is not the only driving factor in this story. And I thought it was a good, clean, middle of the road, enjoyable time. It's not the world's best romantasy, but also I can think of a lot more that are far worse. And so I think that honestly, there are some people who this might be, if you're wondering, hey, I read other things, should I pick up a romantasy? This would not be a bad starting point. I would recommend this one. That is A Far Wilder Magic. The next book that I have here is Sight Unseen by Alexis Marie. And I picked this book up because Alexis Marie is a well-known fan fiction author. I believe that this is her published fiction debut. And though I make no secret of the fact that I do enjoy fan fiction, and I am not somebody who is going to go ahead and buy every single fan fiction that is ever traditionally published. I know that right now there is a big kind of push in like the Hermione fan fiction community, where it seems like every big name in the Hermione fan fiction community is getting traditionally published. They either have been traditionally published or they're about to be. With, we've got Alchemist, we've got The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy, we've got Rose in Chains, and then some other big ones that have been announced as coming. I think Wait and Hope is going to be a new one. And so I'm not going to be somebody who is going to immediately pick one up. However, there are a few fan fiction that get published, and in my eyes, if I have read that specific fan fiction multiple times, it's something that I have, picked up, probably I'm going to say at least 5 times, something that I thoroughly enjoyed and keep coming back to. The least that I can do is support the author by buying that particular one when I see that it gets traditionally published, as just a kind of a thank you, because fan fiction is free. We should keep fan fiction being free. But if I've read that particular fic multiple times, then I kind of feel compelled to buy it when it becomes traditionally published, just as a thank you, because I enjoyed the original fic so much. Her name on AO3 is In a Daze 22, and so if you are in fan fiction circles, if you are on AO3, it's not very hard to find out which over 500,000 word fic this is based off of, but I have read that particular extremely long fic many, many times, and so when this one came out, again, it's not a beat for beat retelling. Obviously, this is not 500,000 words, but it is a little bit of a love letter to that fic. For Sight Unseen, I am going to rate this book 3 tiger lilies. It was just okay. I do prefer the story as a fan fiction as opposed to this particular retelling. I thought that some of the time that was spent in the original fic was better stretched out. Again, she had 500,000 words. She had all the time in the world to kind of explore some of these niche topics when it comes to becoming almost a surrogate mother for this child, and exploring memory loss in adults, and kind of the story beats and the coming together and relearning who you are in different contexts that was so present in the fic. And this is something that was not really explored or really at all in this, because it isn't a direct beat for beat, and it has a lot of little homages to the fic, but I preferred the fan fiction to this. I do hold traditionally published works to a higher standard than fan fiction. I feel like when you are in traditionally published work, you need to make me care about your characters. You can't really rely on me understanding the previous pieces there. And she definitely did a great effort for that, of making you understand the characters and understand their plights. I would have liked to see a tiny bit more. Again, she did a pretty good job. I love the addition of the cat in this. I also thought it was really interesting, kind of the dynamics here, where in the original fan fiction, she had the Hermione character has quite a few close gal friends, and in this one her friend group is extremely pared down, and it feels like they are their own unique people. All of the characters in here, so we've got Hiram, we've got Veda, they aren't exactly copies from the original fiction, so if you don't need to read the fan fiction in order to pick this up, in order to understand it. She does a fairly good job of making you care about these characters and making them individual people. As well, the magic system is completely redone, and she did a very good job, I thought, of explaining the magic system. Maybe I'd want a little bit more, but on the whole, this was a fairly middle of the road book, and I am glad that I read it. And if you are someone who is a fan of In a Day's 22, and you didn't know that that one extremely long fic has been kind of repackaged, completely rewritten, has different setting, different characters, but has like some cute little moments that reference the original fiction, I guess is probably the best way to describe that. It is a completely new story, but there are little nudges, little like winks if you have read the fic. So if you are a fan of In a Day's 22, then I would recommend picking up Alexis Marie's Sight Unseen. If it's something that you're on the fence, though, maybe it might not be the book for everybody, but I thought it was a fairly good time. So I will stop yapping about this one. But this was one of the books that I picked up in March. The next book that I picked up here was Maame by Jessica George. And this is the one that I was referencing earlier, where we had a character who was a friend of the main character, and the main character's down on her luck. And that character recommends her The Alchemist to help her get out of her funk. I am going to rate Maame 6 eldest daughters who have been forced to grow up too early. This book is about a girl. Her name is Maddie, and she lives in London, but her family is from Ghana, and her mother spends most of her, splits her time between London and Ghana, and her father is ailing. He has Parkinson's, and so he is in late stages of his Parkinson's diagnosis, and Maddie is his primary caregiver. Maddie has an older brother who completely is engrossed in his own rap career, and her older brother kind of makes Maddie take care of her dad, and Maddie's mother spends the majority of her time in Ghana, and so Maddie really is the primary caretaker for her dad. She is very overwhelmed, very depressed, and the book is called Maame because Maame is Maddie's nickname, and Maame means woman, and the whole book is her exploring how she has been forced to step into the role of woman and woman of the house probably too early, definitely too early, and how her family is one that keeps everything close to their chest and never really asks for help. And they all are just kind of reliant on this character of Maddie to keep everything running. And Maddie is just bursting at the seams, absolutely exhausted, doesn't know what to do with her life, is depressed, can't ask for help. And she is just hanging on by a thread. This book I thought was pretty good. I couldn't relate fully to everything in this, and I don't think I'm supposed to relate fully to everything in this. There is a lot of pieces that I'm sure if you have relatives from Ghana, there are things in, I think it's pronounced Twi. I hope that that's correct. I apologize if that's not how you pronounce the language there. But she goes, and there's a lot of cultural pieces that I, as someone who is not from Ghana, there are some family cultural dynamics that I could not quite fully understand, but I could relate to a lot of her struggles of kind of that, whether or not her family meant to. It feels like she, by the rights of being the eldest daughter and by kind of being seen as an old soul as a child, felt like she was forced to take up the mantle of an adult too young, and kind of that thing that we see where it's not just eldest daughters and it's not just women, but I'm sure there's probably some sort of correlation about children who are seen as an old soul and seen as wise beyond their years as a child, and then realize as an adult that, hey, I was dealing with some things that maybe I didn't need to at quite the age that I was when I picked those things up. And though when I was a child, I was really proud of being seen as this little adult and who never really needs anything and isn't really needed by their parents, and honestly takes on more responsibility and kind of shocks their parents and how mature they can be and how wise beyond their years, quote unquote, they can be. And so their parents treat them like an adult, but then they get to adulthood and realize that they're already burnt out and exhausted of being an adult, and they're, only in their mid-20s, and that kind of that sadness and that depression and the learning to ask for help as an adult when you've never felt like you could ask for help as a child, simply whether it is something that I don't think it's anyone's fault, like nature versus nurture versus cultural expectations. I thought that was extremely relatable in this book. I will say I hated all of the love interests in this. I know that at the end there is ones that I think that Jessica George is trying to get us to root for. I didn't like any of them. I thought that if Maddie was my friend, I'd be like, hey girl, keep your friends, the friends that are good friends to you, like keep them. The friends that aren't great friends to you, like it's okay to let them go. And I think that was very clear in this book. But the men, oh my gosh, Maddie, like if Maddie was a real person, I know that this is fictional, but this character can do so much better than every single guy that came into this book. And she's not perfect. This character is extremely flawed too. This character has some very annoying traits, but if this character were a real person, I'd be like, girl, say goodbye to all of them and maybe fix this, that, and the other problems that you have and go to therapy. It is a good time, especially if you are somebody who is kind of struggling in kind of the learning that needs to happen in asking for help. If you are kind of the eldest daughter that maybe was parentified too young, if you are in your mid-20s and finding out that you're already burnt out and you don't know what to do, this is one of those books that I could see you really liking and really resonating with you. I think I maybe grew out of this. I think that this would have had a bigger impact on me had I read it 3 or 4 years ago. There are still some pieces in here that I think are still relevant to me today, but I think it would have been more relevant to Julia a few years ago. And some of the things that this book is kind of espousing you to pick up are lessons that I think I've kind of already learned. So on the whole, I thought it was worth it. That is Maame by Jessica George. The next book that I picked up here, I have my handy dandy little smut Kindle because it is where I downloaded one of my latest classics onto. I read The Call of the Wild by Jack London. I'm going to rate that book 5 trips to Alaska. I've read this book a million times. I feel like it's kind of a go-to for me. Whenever I'm feeling a little bit stuck, I am somebody who I have this vision of myself. If we're going back to The Alchemist, if we're going back to Sylvia Plath's fig tree analogy here that I referenced earlier, I love Alaska. I like the Pacific Northwest. I enjoy hiking. I don't know. I'm somebody who really enjoys the outdoors. I really enjoy the wild. And so sometimes I like to pick up a book like Call of the Wild, anything else by Jack London, as kind of just you do like the atmosphere of Alaska and it's okay that you're not living there. This book, it's not anything that was new to me. It is, if you're interested in kind of this, a good novel about kind of this sled dog and his plight, and the lessons that he learns and how he learns to kind of have ties to community when it benefits him, but every once in a while he needs to kind of throw off the leash, so to speak, and become one with the wild and the laws of the wild versus the lies of man. It's a good book. It's a good time. It's a little goofy, but I like it. If you haven't read The Call of the Wild, it's a classic for a reason. It's one that I keep going back to over and over again. I don't know if I necessarily agree fully with the message that I kind of picked up the last time I read this. You need to get rid of the laws of man and come true to the laws of the wild and the laws of nature and that whole like animalistic, and I don't know. I'm like, whatever. But it's a good book nonetheless. It's one that if you haven't read it, I think you should. I really like it. Jack London's The Call of the Wild. Good, quick read. It does not take you very long to read it as well. So if you are dipping your toe in classics, and you like dogs, then it's a fairly good book. The next book I read here, I have my little sticky note placeholder, and I'll put a picture of it on the screen, is Love is an Algorithm by Laura Brooke Robson. I am going to rate Love is an Algorithm 3 jokes that were funny on Twitter but don't really translate to a story. I did not really like this book. The book fell into the trap for me of sometimes somebody is extremely funny on the internet. And just because you are hilarious on the internet and you make a really good tweet and it's really good on Twitter, X, whatever now, if it's funny on Blue Sky, maybe it's good for like a quippy little Substack, I guess, if you want to explore further. But sometimes, like, it should stay a tweet, it should stay a funny little comment, it should stay a funny little TikTok, and it does not need to be a full book. And the characters in this story absolutely were just, it felt like all of these scenarios were like something you'd find on like r/no, this really happened, I swear, where it's just like, okay, like that would never happen in real life. And yes, it's funny, but like, come on. So not a spoiler because it's in like the first 10 pages or so, but our female character, she is being attacked by a mountain lion, and she is joking with the mountain lion as it's attacking her and saying like, oh man, like I'm big and scary, and like, okay, you scratched me and I'm going to walk casually away from you because it's like, this is funny, and like, now I'm going to walk slowly to an aid station, and like, I'm gonna joke about like, hey, do I need a tetanus shot before I pass out from blood loss? And like, I'm like, come on, nobody really is sitting there thinking, and it's enumerating her thoughts. It literally uses bullet points to enumerate the thoughts that come through her head. And it's like, wow, ouch, this hurts. Wow, I can't believe I'm going to die. Oh my God, is this a mountain lion? Well, I need to be big and strong. Oh my goodness, I should break up with my boyfriend. And I'm like, people aren't thinking that. I'm sorry. When you're being attacked by a mountain lion, I've never been attacked by a mountain lion, but the last thing I'm thinking about is, ouch again, I should break up with my boyfriend. Oh, is this going to be a funny story? Like, it's funny, yes, but it should stay a joke, and it didn't do it for me in the book. And so there were a lot of moments like that. Both our main girl and our main guy both fell into that trap of things were orchestrated in a way that like would be a really funny tweet, but is not conducive to a good story, in my opinion. So for that reason, I did not like it. One thing that I did enjoy is Laura, the author, and I, at least the way that she presented how AI works in her book. I'm like, Laura, you and I, where we're both like, hey, I hate this rise of AI, and it has its good spot, and it's useful in certain items, but it is extremely detrimental in others, and how it kind of creates an echo chamber, and people are talking more to their AI chatbots to be a friend instead of the real people in their life, and we're being overly reliant on algorithms and not really getting out into the day-to-day world. And I'm like, Laura, I get you there. You need to stop. And if I were to speak to the author again, this is reviews are not for the author. They've done their piece, but I can commend her for having the exact same worldview that I have when it comes to AI. It seems like, where it's like, it has its place, but man, it's being pushed too much right now. And as someone who, you know, I agree with her. I think it has its spot. I think there are places where AI is helpful, but man, oh man, I mean, I work in IT, and I'm already seeing in certain aspects where I'm like, why did we use AI for that? Our chatbots are extremely helpful for certain tasks, but let's not delegate everything to an AI. My job is not that hard, and so I don't need to have my AI do my job for me when I can do my job. She gets it, so I will commend her for that. She and I don't know if it's necessarily the right opinion, but she and I hold the same opinion, it seems like, with AI, and so I will commend her for that. Love is an Algorithm by Laura Brooke Robson. It's one that maybe I think you could skip. It's an interesting premise, but and she has very, very interesting takes on AI, and I think good takes on AI, but it was better as a tweet. The next book that I picked up was The Skeleton Key by Erin Kelly, and I do have a full-length video on this one. This was something that I did for a roll and review on my channel, where I went ahead and rolled a bunch of dice to get a collection of pieces that would all culminate in a title to be found at the library. So I roll for an author's last name, I roll for a color that needs to be on the book, and I roll for an image or a picture on the cover. And this is the one that I picked up, and I liked it. So I will rate this one 8 missing pelvises. I thought it was really good. It was one that I think that it's kind of two books pushed in one, and so there are definitely flaws, and it's not a perfect book by any means. But if you're interested in a thriller, I liked this one a lot. This is my favorite roll and review that I have rolled since I started that on this channel. And so if you like thrillers and you haven't picked up The Skeleton Key and you're interested in kind of both family drama and a thriller that's kind of about conspiracy theories and putting together hidden messages in popular children's stories and the corruption of fame and what fame can do to a family and how families can be really strong but also kind of these like toxic cesspools, then I would recommend The Skeleton Key. I thought it was a really good time. It's not going to be for everyone, and there's a lot of trigger warnings there, but if you are okay with kind of a lot of horrible things happening to children specifically, and watching children justify the violence and sexualization that happens to them, and you like thrillers and you like family dramas and you are interested in kind of almost like a whodunit type mystery, it has those elements to it. I thought it was really interesting. The Skeleton Key by Erin Kelly. Next that I picked up here is another book from the library, is Beasts of a Little Land by Johea Kim. This is a story that is set in the Japanese occupation of Korea, and it takes place over a large span of time. I believe it's the 20s into like the 60s. I'm not even going to fact check that, but it's a large stretch of time. I think I'm going to go with the 20s and the 60s. It might even be like earlier than that and to later than that. But we are following a lot of really interesting key points in Korean history that have to do with the colonization of Korea and the various characters that all are intertwined in each other's lives and how these major historic events all impact them. So it is very epic in scope. It's very grand in scale. We are following, honestly, multiple generations as they are all intertwined. It is a book that I am going to rate 4 tissues. This is a book that I did not cry, but it is depressing. Man, this book is depressing. I thought it's good. I thought it was enjoyable. Like, I don't want to say enjoyable. There were a lot of really good pieces to it, but this is a book where you are going to kind of feel like at the end of it, you're just, oh, and there isn't a lot of, I don't want to say there's not a lot of hope, because honestly, the epilogue was very hopeful. But right up into the epilogue, at the end of it, you're just like, oh my gosh. And so I thought that it was very good. There was a lot of feeling, to it. There were a lot of historical events to it, but this book kind of felt like all of the characters who are trying their best do their best. It felt like they were not rewarded. And then sometimes the skeevy kind of characters who go through and are trying to kind of push things into their own way, they all end up rewarded. And so some of the characters that I was like, you deserve your comeuppance, they never got a comeuppance. And some of those characters who I felt like karma should give them a happy ending, they didn't get a happy ending. And so I was like, oh my goodness. And I know that books don't need to be morality tales, but I like it when books kind of are tied up at the end with like a nice little happy bow, and the characters who deserve good things at the end should have a happily ever after, and the characters that do dastardly deeds should get their comeuppance. And this is not one of those tales, so it's probably more true to life. But I like escapism. So, this book, you're not really going to get that escapism. I don't know a ton about Korean history. I am trying to read more. I'm reading more Hong Kong, learning more about some of the points in Korean history. The author here, Johea Kim, she's an immigrant family to the United States, and we do have some characters who do immigrate to the United States. But we are following a large group of characters over a large span of time, and it was a very good read. But do not go in here expecting like that happy catharsis. for me, it was at the end, it just felt like it was good and it was enjoyable, but it felt like I just kind of got punched in the gut. And so if you are interested in that and kind of a harrowing look at what it means to be human and kind of all of these interconnected cast of characters, it was very well done. I thought that this book was beautifully written. I thought it was very, very inventive, but also it felt like these were real things that could happen. And it was very well described. I loved the metaphor of just the tiger throughout this as well. Very, very well done. But I read it and I was like, oh, okay, all right. Like, it was good, but wow. And I think that's what she was going for. This book, it made me feel very heavy things. It made me really sad. I kind of came out of it a little bit depressed. But it definitely, she crafted she wrote this very well. So I would still recommend it. Just know what you're getting into and kind of prepare yourself in that mental headspace before you pick this up. I just picked this up from the library, and so I had no reference point to this book beforehand. And so all that I had to go off of was the cover and the little summary there. And I just picked it up. I had no idea what I was in for. So it was very good, but know what you're in for if you're picking this up. And if you just find this book in the wild like I did, good luck. Into the comment section, let me know if this is one that you picked up with no context as well, because man, it was an experience for sure. And then I am going a 180 here with A Market of Dreams and Destiny by Trip Gailey as my next read. Again, this is one that I picked up from the library, and I'm going to rate this one 3 cats that redeemed this for me. There are a lot of good things in this book. Overall, I did not really enjoy this book. I thought it wasn't terrible. I didn't hate this book, but it is a cozy fantasy. Again, I'm not really a cozy fantasy girly. It is this kind of alternate history of England where instead of the king separating from the church and creating the Anglican Church, in order to divorce his wife, instead he turns to Druidism. And so we have Queen Titania, and it is now this kind of alternate universe London where we have magic and kind of this like very true seelie, unseelie, fae, trickster. This is a book of contracts. There is male romance. It was a good time. I like seeing that. I like a good male romance story, especially when it's written by a man as well. I think that there are a lot of queer male love stories written by straight women. And that it's good to see a queer male love story written by a queer male author. So I'm going to I like shout out to that, just because I feel like there is a large lack of that in the market. It is very much this is a book about contract law. It essentially is what it boils down to, and how to twist contracts. This is a book that is very pro-union as well, and I love seeing a good strike in a story. I don't see that very often, where you've got people who are like, hey, our working conditions suck, let's strike. And so I'm very that was a really interesting plot point. I did not see that coming. And I'm like, yeah, you go, like, Trip Gailey, hell yeah. Like, if you're gonna write a story, let's write a story about like an alternate reality London. Let's write it about contract law, and let's talk about workers' rights and how we can unionize to be treated better. So it had a lot of like really interesting elements, but for me, I was bored. I thought that I couldn't really tell either of the 2 male leads apart. They were kind of interchangeable, and their romance didn't feel super believable to me, where it just kind of felt like, oh, I have a crush on him, and that was already established before the book started, and within a few pages they're together, and then that's it. They're together, and that's fine. But when I'm reading a romance story, I like the pacing differently, and I think that to each their own. If you want a story where it was very clear, like, hey, I had a crush on him, he had a crush on me, we kiss. and we're together. Great. If that's the kind of story that you like, more power to you. I like the yearning. I wish that it had been more of an, instead of them getting together so early in the book, that was kind of more towards the end. And maybe that's just how I like my romance stories. But if you are interested in a male romance that is kind of contract law, very true fae, set in alternate reality London, and we have a very large prominent plot point that revolves around a labor strike, then A Market of Dreams and Destiny, this will be the book for you. But for me, it wasn't my absolute favorite, but there's a cute cat and it has a lot of really good interesting plot points. So there's a lot of good elements. I wish that this had just cooked a little bit more. For me, I wish that the order that things had happened were rearranged. I think I would have liked it more had we had the same plot points, but just in different story beats to it. But that's just a personal opinion. And then the last book that I'll get into, because I do have one more that I'm currently reading, but it will be a surprise. It's for my next video. I'm currently reading a classic novel that I will do a classic deep dive eventually. I'm on my second read through in a row of this. It's my favorite satire. So in the comments below, if you know me already, you might already know what book I am rereading again to prep for my next video. But so go ahead, and if you think you know what it is, favorite satire, go ahead and post it. But that one I read after this one. So the last one that I will get into here is Heart the Lover by Lily King. If you are on the internet, likely you've heard about this book before. I am going to give Heart the Lover 12 made-up card games. I loved Heart the Lover. Now, I think I liked it so much because the very, very beginning, we are introduced to these three characters. So we've got our main girl, who she goes by Jordan. It's a nickname these two boys give her, and her collegiate relationship with these two boys. We've got Sam and we've got Nash. And it felt like she distilled my college experience and split it up among three characters perfectly in that first bit. And so automatically I was hooked, where it was like, oh my goodness, this girl who she's a little bit insecure and we've got these smarter people around her. I'm like, check. Kind of the discussions around like, oh, it feels like being an honors student and having to write an honors thesis and like learning how to translate things back and forth in Greek or Latin for a college class. Like, check. Sam is one of these characters, and he has Augustine's Confessions on his bedside table, and I'm like, oh my gosh, check, girl. Who among us didn't go to I went to a Christian college, and who among us didn't date or was the person who had Confessions of St. Augustine on their bedside table? And who among us has not had their heart broken if you went to a small Baptist college like I did? Who among us hasn't had their heart broken by somebody who has Thomas Aquinas on their bedside table and can't go 5 seconds without talking about Kierkegaard? And I'm going to let you infer if I was the Sam or if I was the girl, because I was the Sam. I was the one who had Confessions of Augustine on her bedside table. I was the annoying one who couldn't shut up about Thomas Aquinas and all those things. That was me. I was Sam. And this is one of those where I was like, oh, good Lord. And it felt like she just distilled my college experience. And since that happened so early in the book, I was absolutely hooked. I bought everything. And so then, of course, as the story goes on and we start falling in love with some of these characters, I was like, oh my gosh, I too am in love with Nash. It's not set at my college, but it felt like it was set at my college. I felt like I knew all these characters. I felt like I was in love with Nash too. I felt like every one of these felt like a real person. It was almost a little terrifying. I was like, poor Lily. I know how whenever I'm writing, I'm not a professional writer by any stretch of the imagination, but whenever I write, I can take something that maybe wasn't exactly how it happened to me, but take those feelings and put it in a new situation. And I hope that is what happened here. I hope that the author did not actually live through all of these things, but because so many of these exact things have happened rearranged slightly and in a kaleidoscope of different ways in my life. It felt very realistic. And so if some of the stuff did happen to her, I want to give her a hug. Very much like when you read a book and it's like, oh, there is no original thought. Like there is no truly new experience, and someone can take something that has happened to you and rearrange it and put a little bow on it and put words on it. And it felt like she was reaching through the book. I absolutely loved this book. I know people have been talking about this book a lot, and there are flaws with it, right? This is not a perfect book, but I could ignore all those flaws simply because of how she opened this and how it started. And so, though the rest of the book diverged completely from my own lived experience, I was completely bought in. And so I thought it was really well done. It was pretty predictable. You could kind of see where it was going. I've seen that criticism. I've also seen the criticism how this book could be solved if people who were in love with each other just communicated and talked to each other. And I will agree with that. Like, all of these problems are made up problems. They're not all made up problems, but they all could be solved with a conversation. And so the whole plot could crumble if somebody just like talked about what they were feeling. But I didn't care. I thought it was really good. This was a stellar way to end my March. If you haven't picked up Heart the Lover yet, I absolutely would. It's a prequel and a sequel to another book by her that I have not read called Writers and Lovers. And so I will probably have to pick up Writers and Lovers eventually. But I'm really, really happy that I started with Heart the Lover specifically because of how Heart the Lover began and how it really gripped me. And it felt like every single character in that first college spit specifically, it's like, hey, these are either things that happened to me or people who were me or people who I was friends with. And so it felt very, very realistic. I ended up having to look. I was like, what college is this supposed to be set at? Because this could have been set at my college in the years that I was there, simply by how accurate it was to kind of her experience. The experience that she wrote about was very much my college experience. So I would really recommend Heart the Lover. And Lily King specifically, I hope that the rest of the book didn't happen to you, but you did a great job of writing a very realistic tale and kind of capturing kind of the core essence of some of those things. So that was a fantastic way to end this wrap up for me with Heart the Lover. So there you have it. I'm actually perfect timing on here because the light from the window is about to kind of cast a bunch of shadows on my face. So I'm glad that we're ending here. So I will end this little app session. I hope that you were able to be a little bit productive while listening to this. If you end up picking up any of these books, or if you have read any of these books, put your thoughts down below as well. If you have any recommendations for me, please let me know. I would love to kind of pick up some of your favorite books if you have some recent reads that you've done. I am always looking for new things to add to my TBR, and hopefully watching this video kind of let you decide if any of these books are something that you're interested in. If you have similar tastes as me, I hope that this decided, like, either moved something up or made you think that this is one that you could skip based on my thoughts on it. But as always, thank you so much for spending your time with me. Of all the videos you could click on, you clicked on mine. So I really appreciate you. And just, I hope you had a fantastic March and are having a great beginning of spring.